Jedva. We are a little late, but people are still having lunch.
Just for your information, I think at 3:15 we need to go.
Yes, yes, okay. Yes,
just
yes.
for you to know.
Yes, if discussion is longer, you can leave, of course. And, yes. Da, to tako ćemo. Jeste, pa tek onda ide. Da. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being patient and being here for this last event of our international conference. And I wish you all warm welcome to the Circle U Prize Award ceremony. Actually, this is the second Circle U Prize ceremony. The first one was organized last year in Louvain. And as far as I know, the third one is going to be organized next year in King's College in London. My name is Ivan Mihajlović. I am a representative of University of Belgrade, but also I am representative of the work package 2 of the area Circle U project. Our coordinator, Natalia Tihanov-Singqvist, the coordinator of the work package 2, asked me to be the moderator of this event, considering that I'm coming from University of Belgrade, and I was included in all the activities in preparation of this ceremony. So now I also want to thank our dear guests and panelists who are going to join me today in this activity. This is Professor Nicolas Lumier from University of Paris City, Professor Duško Ilić from University King's College, and Iris Žeželj, our own, from University of Belgrade. Later on, I will introduce them with much more details, but now we should skip to this official part of the award ceremony. So, first of all, I will tell you something a little bit about the prize. As I already said, this is the second time that we've had this call open for the prize, and what is behind this idea. As we all know, the Circle U is dealing with development of new projects which are of interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary nature. Also, we are developing networks in this direction, but another thing that we wanted to know is are there already existing projects which are of interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary nature in our network at the university, which are in frame of the network. So this is why we have launched this call in the network to be able to recognize and showcase such projects. And as you can see here, it is open to all academics, academic staff, postdoctoral students, and doctoral students of our universities, and all subjects of science actually can be involved in this. The only pre-recognition that we had is that the principal investigator had to be from one of our universities, but external members of the research team, of course, could be from other universities also. And at least we had to have at least two different scientific fields in each application. So this procedure, as I already said, was organized in frame of the work package 2, and our coordinator was Natalia Tihanov-Sinhris. She is from University Louvain in Belgium, and she is actually the one who was coordinating the entire process. We opened the call this year in February 14, and it was open until March 31, and this year, we received 9 high-quality applications from different universities in frame of our network, and we had to decide which 3 of those 9 applications are going to be award winners this year. So we formed this evaluation panel that was consisting of senior researchers, also senior professors from our networks, but also from the representative of administrative staff. For example, we had one vice rector for research. So the task was not easy. We had to evaluate these 9 applications and to find which 3 should be nominees for this year's award. And this was the criterions that we had. Of course, we were seeking for high quality and originality of the research. The methodological approaches should be such that we have high level of interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity. And of course, we were also looking the teams and how many of external stakeholders were involved in this, and how many of external stakeholders and wide society can have some benefits of such projects. And after evaluation, we decided that this year, these 3 projects are going to be award winners. So the first project, as you can see, is CREA Vision, Visual Human Artificial Intelligence Partnership for Civic Action. And the principal investigator was Janet Raffner. She is a postdoctoral fellow in informatic communication technology at University of Aarhus. Then we had the project Remember. The principal investigator was Aline Cordinier, postdoctoral fellow of cognitive psychology of the Louvain in Belgium. And the third project was Behave, and interdisciplinary chair of primary care with the principal investigator Therese von Durm. And she is a research associate at public health, also at University Catholic of Louvain. So, now I will shortly present the teams of each of these selected projects, and after that I will ask the representatives of the projects to shortly in some 15 minutes present their projects and research ideas, to point out especially on inter and transdisciplinarity of their research. After that presentation, we are going to have all three presentations then. After that, we are going to move to this panel section and panel discussion, where our colleagues who are in the panel section are going to give their opinions and some thoughts about the projects that we see, and potentially to ask questions to representatives of the project teams. After that, we will open discussion for the audience as well, and you are all welcome, of course, to be included in the discussion. So now let us start. The awarded projects, as I said. The first one is the project Crea Vision, and the representative of that project is colleague Janet Raffner. She is here today, and some short information about her is given here on this slide. I already said that she is coming from University of Aarhus. And I will now give the microphone to her and ask her to present her projects. As I said, it's some 15 minutes if possible. 15, not 50, sorry.
May I have the clicker? Yeah, great. Thank you very much, and thank you for the very generous award. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here today to talk about my research. And as you saw, there are lots of different names on that list, and that's not even all of them. We have about 50 people who have been working on this project, so the credit needs to go around to everyone, of course. But today I will tell you a little bit about this project, Crea Visions. But before I get to that, I want to touch on this interdisciplinary topic and tell you a little bit about who I am. So I have my PhD in information communication technology, which is sort of in between cognitive science and human-computer interaction. But I also have undergraduate degrees in physics and art. And I also have a master's in physics focusing on computational fluid dynamics. So lots of different areas. I've been affiliated at pretty much every department you can think of. And my colleagues and collaborators in this project span most of those. I am a junior center director at what's called the Center for Hybrid Intelligence, run by Professor Jacob Shearson, also professor of several disciplines. And we do research very broadly in how humans and algorithms have optimal synergies. And by that, very broadly, I mean, how can we use artificial intelligence to augment human competencies rather than to simply automate and replace. And so these are just a couple of the different research areas. And I work a lot in Research Unit 1, focusing on human skills and competencies, and then also hybrid intelligence for industry. So working in between fundamental research as well as corporate setting, as well as with the general public. Yeah, thinking about artificial intelligence, because I'm not sure of everyone's background here. Back around 2010, many people were very afraid, okay, AI is coming for your jobs. AI is coming to replace so many different things. Okay, then maybe around 2015, there was a lot of research saying, that's not going to happen. There are so many key human competencies that are not being replaced by our algorithms. And then in 2022, the consulting firm McKinsey came out with their big agenda saying that the future is hybrid intelligence. So really focusing on these optimal synergies between humans and algorithms. And so this field itself is very interdisciplinary. It focuses a lot on digital interfaces, on the humans taking responsibility for this work, upskilling people. So instead of having a technology that can make you forget your skills because you don't use them so much, focusing on upskilling and this concept of mutual learning. So a human and an algorithm learning together. The main area of my work is in creativity, And so if you think about all of these creativity tools, digital tools, in conjunction with artificial intelligence, you can sort of think about it in 3 different categories. So support tools, that could be Google Docs or Photoshop or GarageBand, if anyone still uses that. And then you have computational creativity. So that's where computer scientists are developing algorithms that produce something that could be considered creative. So for example, a computer scientist writing a program that spits out a piece of music or a piece of art. And then you have this last area, and that's my area of interest, this co-creativity. So human-computer interaction researchers working with AI researchers to create tools to support co-creativity. So humans and algorithms going through an iterative process of being creative together. Here are just a couple of examples. I'm sure, raise your hand if you have tried DALL-E 2 or Stable Diffusion. Anyone, a couple? Anyone ChatGPT? Yeah, okay. So now many of you get the feeling of what these sort of off-the-shelf human AI tools are. Yes, so for those of you who don't know, DALL-E. DALL-E uses what's called a large language model. And that's essentially an AI model that has been trained on a huge corpus of text, so lots and lots of text. And how anyone in the public, can interact with it is by typing something here in text, like an astronaut riding a horse, and then it gives you these different images. So that is the basics of how this, it's called text to image, and this field of text to X, text to image, text to text, text to video, text to audio, all of these types of AI technologies are becoming increasingly prevalent. So I'm interested in how we can use these human AI co-creativity tools for social good. So instead of just sitting there trying to make interesting pictures of, for example, an astronaut on a horse, how can we harness this power and use it for social good? So in my research, I'm combining citizen science or public participation in research with this human-computer interaction and this co-creativity. And from a research perspective, I draw heavily on the framework of community citizen science, which in this very interesting article from a few years ago discussed how human-computer interaction can meet this community citizen science with the key concepts of participatory democracy, so influencing policy and addressing local concerns, community co-design, and power rebalance. So how can we combine these types of technologies that mostly computer scientists and researchers are developing in their labs with citizen science? So really going in and working in the context in which the tool should be used. And here's just a visual that gives you a little bit of a sense of the different disciplines that goes into this area, which I'm still working on coining the title Casual Creators with a Purpose. It has not caught on yet, but maybe it will. So it's a combination of, you see, HCI, human-computer interaction, social science, cognitive science, citizen science, all of these different things. And so that leads me to the project, which I will just present briefly now. I thought it was important to give a little bit of context, but this project called Crea Visions can be considered AI-assisted participatory futures. And so since 2020, we have developed five, now the 6th version will actually be here in Belgrade next month. And the overarching theme of this project is to create a tool to allow anyone in the public to envision possible futures for their local community. And so again, lots and lots of people, 50 different collaborators, 50 plus probably on all these different iterations. And we've worked with everyone from youth mentoring organizations to archivists working with the National Archives, science museums, art historians, the full spectrum. The first version of the project was published in 2021. We launched it with AI for Good, if you're familiar with that organization. Let's go through. The second version was in September of 2021 with what's called the Klimafolkemål in Danish, which is the Danish People's Climate Summit. So we took our interface here where participants are blending different images using machine learning. I won't go into the details of it, but essentially they can manipulate the content. So that's large-scale features, like whether it's a building or whether it's a mountain, with style. That's the other slider there. And those are small-scale features, like the colors and textures. And we developed this interface in a constant iteration with the different stakeholders, for example, the Climate Summit leaders, and gave also possibilities for the end users to give their creation a title and a caption. And here you can see the mayor of the local community where we had this event was presenting an award to the students who won a small competition with their image. It was called What We Have Left, and they wrote a lovely poem with it too. Last year we did a version in Venice where we worked with both the Creativity and Cognition Conference as well as many local community members in Venice. And here we specifically tailored our tool to be trained on images, buildings and structures in Venice. And this was also cool. We had a poet there who was a local Venetian. He wrote a poem about the project saying that it was like watering our curiosity just as we water plants. And I think that it was quite inspiring for me. And then we had an exhibition and gave away postcards. I go quickly through it here. Then we had a version in Paris that was also funded by a Small Circle U grant, where we had Parisians focus on problems and solutions. And in this tool, we incorporated that text to image as well. So this was a new version where participants could use those sliders for style and content, but also create using text to image. So they would take a starting image and then ideate on it. I go quickly here. You can see how they ideate through on a problem and a solution. And so we look at all of their different submissions going through over time. We're also expanding to create a universe where participants can geotag the images that they make and write a little bit about it. Now we're doing a version in Aarhus with the municipality, trying to tackle these 7 wild problems. So that's like youth mental health, health in general, recruitment and competencies, so workforces. And then, yeah, you can see here we have images of Aarhus, and then they create what their hopes or fears could be, for example, flooding. Here are some examples. This one here is, I like it a lot on the left. We're missing physical workers such as carpenters. That's a big problem, is that we don't have handy workers. The last promotion is that we'll be coming to Belgrade as part of the project. So June 17th and 18th, we'll be here in the Belgrade Botanical Gardens. So if you're interested in helping both the research, but also to envision the future of this city, please come to it. And a call to action, if anyone is here and you have particular locations that you would like to be included in the CreaVisions project, so photographs of different places that you think are important to visualize or to get the general public's opinion on what should be done with them, please send them to me. They will be included in the project. It is citizen science, so we want to get as many different perspectives as possible. And that's just a little bit more on the team. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a very interesting presentation. And now we are going to move further. The next project is the project with the short name Remember, and the principal investigator Aline Cordinier. And here is a short bio of Dr. Aline Cordinier. And now I will ask her to shortly present her project.
So by the way, we've heard a great talk. Thank you so much. Taking us to the future, I'm going to take you towards the past. So first of all, I wanted to thank you for allowing us to be here today, and thanks Circle U for this great opportunity. We are very humbled to have received this prize, and we hope you'll be interested in our project that looks at official and family memories related to collaboration and colonization in Belgium. But before I go any further, I think it's really important to say that I'm only here as a representative of our team because we work really tightly together. And I'm happy that two of my colleagues are here today. So we've got Louise Ballière and Walter Reichers here that are our PhD students within that team. So please go and talk to them afterwards. They probably can tell you way more about this and their particular research. So I want to tell you two seemingly unrelated stories to start with. And the first one starts as the summer of 1944 was coming to an end. After 4 long years of occupation in Belgium, the country was finally liberated after World War II. And so within this newfound freedom, also we found, oh, it doesn't come, sorry. Can I click on this? Can you maybe click from there? We've got the, no, it's the previous one. If you click on it, the short video should start. There you go. So within this newfound freedom, we also found a situation of violence towards people who collaborated with the German during these 4 years. And so judicial proceedings were quickly set up, and people who ended up being on the wrong side of this story was sentenced. Sometimes they lost their civil rights, they had to pay fines, they were imprisoned, in some cases even got the death sentences. But this repression towards the collaborators was not only a matter of the law. We also saw citizens taking matters in their own hands. Some women who were promiscuous with the Germans were shaved. Companies fired people they believed to have collaborated with the Germans, and houses were tagged and vandalized. That's the first story. Second story, we're going 16 years later and about 6,000 kilometers further south. Now we are in Congo. We are on the 30th of June 1960. After multiple decades of Belgian rules, the Congo finally got its independence. And quickly after this historic moment, scene of violence arose around the country. Many colonists, Belgian colonists, then had to flee. Some went across to neighboring countries, but a lot of them just got on a plane and went back to Belgium. So why am I telling you about these two seemingly unrelated stories? Why do they matter, and why are we looking at them? Well, first of all, these are two of the most important events in living Belgium history. If you think about the last 100 years, the two major events are World War II and the colonization of the Congo for Belgians. More importantly, they describe events of people who have found themselves on the wrong side of history, at least according to current perceptions. It wasn't always the case, but it is nowadays. And so these are controversial episodes, and they're still important to this day. Even this morning, I opened my phone, looked at a national newspaper, and the very first article was about the colonization of the Congo. So they are still highly debated, and they are still very relevant to current discussion within a society. And more interestingly, they've also led to very diverging memories at different levels, and that's what I'm going to focus on because we're interested in memory. Let's take the case of the diverging memories of the collaboration. This is Belgium, small country, but with a complex history. Oh, sorry. What you see here is you've got in yellow, so we can't see, in yellow we've got the northern part of the country, which is Flanders. People speak Flemish, a type of Dutch. On the southern part of the country, we've got Wallonia, French speakers, and we also have a German linguistic communities. I won't be talking about them today. I'll focus on the two major linguistic communities. These communities have completely diverging memories about the collaboration during World War II. Indeed, in Flanders, there's often discussions about the repression, how it was led by the government, and they've also asked for amnesty towards collaborators. By amnesty, I don't mean just a forgiveness of the past, but almost a complete erasure of the wrongdoing. So this is a topic that's very often discussed within the media and society in general in Flanders. They also link it very closely to the Flemish cause. It's just something that's very important to their Flemish identity, something they are sometimes even proud of. However, in Wallonia, it's a completely different story. Even though the most internationally known Belgian collaborator was from the French-speaking area, here it is, Léon de Grelle. He was the leader of the Rex party. In Wallonia, it's like it never existed. We don't talk about the collaboration. And when we do, we see it as a Flemish problem. It's what happened in the north, nothing happened here. Obviously, this is not true. If we look at numbers, we had a high level of collaboration on both sides of the country. By high, I still mean quite low, but similar level. But the memories, the collective memories, completely differ between the two sides. On the north, we've got a certain pride and an open discussion about this past. On the south, we've got silence, often linked to societal shame. What about colonization? There are some differences between the two linguistic communities, but they are fairly minor. The diverging memories here are more questions of generation. When the independence occurred, people who were colonists at the time were welcomed back home. Here we have a photo of the National Aviation Partners, Sabena, who was bringing them back. And upon their arrival at the airport in Belgium, we find the Red Cross that is there to help them. We've got scouts and guides to support the return. We've got actually a whole range of volunteers that are here to drive them back to their family or wherever they need to be. And we even have, at the time she was a princess, she became a queen, Paola here, that was there also to welcome them home. But as time moved on and we started learning more and more about the atrocities that were conducted in the Congo, we have books coming out talking about it and documentaries. Mentalities started to change and switch. And nowadays, with a global movement such as Black Lives Matter, younger generation are asking more and more vocally for changes, acknowledgement, and reparation toward that past. Furthermore, recent research done by our colleagues show that older generations tend to still have a paternalistic view about this past. We were there to help them. We brought them schools, hospitals, road. We didn't mean anything bad, it was a different context. Whereas younger generation have a tendency to focus on the atrocities that were done over there. One key element that we haven't discussed yet are the family memories linked to the people who lived these events, the people who were there. For them, it's not a story just about Belgians, Walloon, or Flemish. It's the story of their father, their grandmother, their great-grandparents. It's a story about their family, someone they love, with whom they might share a name, they share an identity. And so the weight of that past might be different for the different generations of these families. how do they manage this past within the society that we live in? And so the intersection between family, personal, intimate identity and collective memories is really at the heart of our project. Our approach is to see memory work as an hourglass, with the concept, first of all, of sand and time passing. The hourglass is also an interesting shape, as it allows to invert it, we'll talk about that later, but also to see the different levels. So on the top lies the societal, historical, and cultural context of this past. This changes the attitudes and the perception, as well as the memories of collaboration and colonization. At the center, at the narrow ball between the narrow part between the two balls, lies the particular case of family memories. It acts as a filter to interpret and understand what's coming from the top. At the bottom, we have the individual. However, the individual is not an empty receptacle. Everyone has their own attitudes, beliefs, and social identification that will change the way we perceive and apprehend this past. However, we can turn around the hourglass because we can't forget that they are individual, and it's the individuals that remembers. And so family memories and personal memories also influence debates and discussions at the collective level. So we have to look at it both from a top-down perspective and a bottom-up perspective. Finally, if we put the hourglass on its side, we recognize the infinity symbol. And it's just the idea that there's a continuous, never-ending interaction between the macro and the micro through the families. So if we want to really understand this collective past, we need to understand first the history of it. After all, it is a question of what happened in that past and how we dealt with it. But it's also a question of what's happening nowadays, how the state managed it in the past, how it is used for political purpose, how it influences decision today. So it's a matter of political science. But sometimes it's also something very intimate, very personal. It depends on the individual processes at play in constructing, remembering, and apprehending memory. And so it's a matter of psychology. And so this is why we've been working together for quite a few years now. Our method has been to follow the hourglass and create a truly interdisciplinary method. We're working within 3 different packages. The first one, led by my colleague Louise here, is trying to map out the emotion and the level of blame perceived by the public at different levels throughout time. So it tells us about the community, the difference between Flanders and Wallonia. It tells us about generation, people who heard about it when they were in the 40s, 60s, 80s, 2000 and nowadays. Our second work package, led for the Flemish part by my colleague Walter here and for the French-speaking part by myself, is at the heart of our research as we are interviewing family members to see how they deal, how they talk about the past within the families across multiple generations. It's about seeing how we interact between what we know of our past and what we hear about these historical events at the collective level. The third work package, it's still kind of about to start. We're hoping to get a new PhD student starting in September, and it'll be led by that PhD student and myself. And it's looking at better understanding the different processes at play at the individual level. So how do we remember? How do we transmit? What are the links with emotions and attitudes? So as you can see here, we've got the 3 levels. Macro, context, society. Meso, families. Macro, individuals. Each work package is led by one discipline, but under the supervisions of all the others, and we have very regular meetings to talk to each other. But more importantly, or data inform one another. What Louise is finding help us understand and analyze what we see within our families. What we get within the families, the personal stories, as well as what we get in the media, are now used for the third work package to create valid, ecologically valid vignettes to try and influence and modify attitudes over the general public. So we all inform and talk to each other as much as we can. It's an ongoing project. We're about halfway through it, so we hope you'll keep looking at what we're doing. But I want to leave you out with a couple of general thoughts. And the first thought goes to one of our colleagues who have said this sentence many, many times, but I believe it's quite important, is that after mass violence, we do not count in years. We count in generations. It's not because we are 70, 80 years after these events, seems far away, but how many generations have passed? It still matters to these following generations, and so we have to keep discussing it and talking about it. Second point, memory needs to be analyzed from both a bottom-up and top-down perspective. It's not enough to just look at a historical level, to go back into archives and try to see what happened. It's not enough to just try and understand how individuals in their little mind think about this. We need to take the political, the historical, and the individual influence all into account if we really want to understand this influence all over. And so everybody here will agree, but it's not always a given. Interdisciplinary work is essential. It requires time. It requires curiosity from everybody's part, and a bit of humility to agree that we don't have all the answers. We need to work together to achieve it. So that's it for me today. I'm just leaving my team there, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. And our third project is Project Behave, Interdisciplinary Chair of Primary Care. The principal investigator is our colleague Therese van Durm from University Leuven, and she is now going to present shortly in some 15 minutes her research. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Ivan. I'm very proud to be there today as a representative of Beehive, the project I'm going to present to you. Beehive, the image, of course, of a hive is a structure that is funded by a private fund, the fund Dr. Daniel de Koning, and it is an interdisciplinary chair of primary care. Why a chair of primary care? In Belgium, primary care is acknowledged as to be not so well structured, even if things are underway, and receive not so much attention at the research perspective, but also for policymakers. And this is now going to change, also because of this funding. Besides funding two chairs, one in French-speaking Belgium, one in Dutch-speaking Belgium. Thanks to Aline, you saw that Belgium indeed has two main languages. They also fund other projects in order to support primary care. You have them here, and I won't go into detail. I don't have the time for that. So the main missions of these three chairs are, of course, research with and about primary care, also teaching in order to translate findings into teaching for future primary care providers, and then knowledge sharing with policymakers, with actors of primary care, which are patient representative, informal caregiver representatives, but also providers, sickness funds, and of course health authorities. It's a co-financed model, so we received each year 500,000 euro, and there is also a co-financing by our institutions. And which institutions are they? 3 universities. These are the 3 French-speaking universities in Belgium which offer a complete course: UC Louvain, Université de Liège, and Université Libre de Bruxelles. But more importantly, also 3 university colleges who in Belgium train primary care providers who are not at the university level. This is nurses, this is occupational therapists, speech therapists, and so on. And here you see the list of members who are part of the chair in order of importance, starting with nurses, sociologists, medical doctors, those are general practitioners and public health doctors, a bit of administration, then osteopathy, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, education science, psychology, and pharmacy. So all these members are part of Beehive. Financed for 5 years, the first stops at the end of this year, but we have a promise, if all goes well, to go for 5 other years afterwards. We try to be a model for social innovation, which takes into account the perspectives of research, of teaching, of knowledge sharing, and also of health authorities, without which it's not possible to implement findings of research and good practices. With a view on transsectoral collaboration, as in many health systems, Belgium health system is very fragmented between social care and healthcare, between primary care and hospital care, etc., etc. We also try to capitalize a maximum about the shared expertise of all these providers within the chair, but also outside the chair. Interdisciplinarity knowledge is really very at the heart between us, but also with people outside. And then an important point is the focus on academization of primary care providers. When you saw the list of members, some of them who are doing a PhD, and I will show you which ones, have also part-time as a clinician. And so it is important to really have the finger on the pulse of what is happening, what is important, in what language we should talk to the people, and not in our ivory tower, of course. The aim is to ultimately support 5 aims of people in our society. It is, of course, improving health-related quality of life, also organizing better care, so better quality of care, realizing more value for care, what is called sometimes more efficient care. This cannot be done without supporting the provider work life, and ultimately also seek social justice and inclusion, and you will see how we operationalize it. And of course, those 5 aims are interlinked. So during the first year, we did a huge gap analysis with all the researchers involved. We did a large survey. We got over 6,000 responses about what is happening today in primary care, what are the challenges, and how can research and teaching help improve things. As a result, we came up with 4 axes, and they are here. We gathered them around work packages with, of course, leads from different universities and university colleges. The first is about the structuration of primary care. The idea is to help people structure themselves and not only have an organic creation of a structure that with overlaps, with misuse of care, etc. And this package is also, has also the task to measure the added value of the chair. The second is about community participation and how to empower communities. The third is about the perception of people living in complex situations because of the superposition of medical difficulties, but also difficulties in relational health or with finances, with social support, etc. And the fourth is about interprofessional collaboration. The teaching part is mainly about supporting the skills needed to work towards in primary care. And why? Because most trainings are really focused on to be able to work in hospitals and not so much in skills needed in primary care regarding, for instance, new functions and new roles. For instance, to be able to manage this structuration of primary care through a place-based governance. Also new paradigms, for instance, we speak a lot about goal-oriented care instead of disease-focused care. And then, for instance, handling with new technologies of information and communication. And here are the 4 axes and all the people who are involved. When you see the little hat, it's people who are doing a PhD within the chair. So you see the specific themes that are in this case related to the structuration of primary care. I won't go into details. I'm happy to share the presentation afterwards. This is the second axis about empowering communities, empowering people. And you see every time the logos of the universities and university colleges involved. This is the third axis, the perspective of the user, so people in complex conditions, being it people with chronic wounds or having hospital at home or having chronic pain or being pre-frail. And the fourth axis is about interprofessional collaboration. Here again, you have 3 doctoral students who are going to achieve their work within Beehive. So people in 6 different institutions not working under the same roof. This is a huge challenge to manage interdisciplinarity. So this takes some governance, some clear task allocation, and clearly also room to discuss all things, the different things that need to be done to be sure that all this research is well aligned at the one hand between themselves, but also with the needs of the community. And this is the expanded vision, but in clear, we are working together with regular meetings among these work packages, but also internal to these work packages, with also representatives of the authorities to be able to move along. Knowledge sharing with different modalities. We have monthly webinars. We also have newsletters, a yearly conference. Every 2 years, we do also the conference with the Dutch-speaking chair. And then you see those different items here, Brussels Takes Care, Proxy Santé. Those are regional or federal projects in which we are heavily involved to be able to support decision-making whenever possible in a very small way, unfortunately. And so, if I have the time for a small example of you prefer to, okay. So one of the researchers of the doctoral students is about care for people with chronic wounds as a showcase of one of the researches that can be done in our chair. The involved disciplines are nursing, public health, geriatrician, and a sociologist. So the idea is really to see what care those people need, what are the main challenges facing the organization for care. So we did an investigation in a routine database, seeing the number of people having wound care at home. And of those people, the majority received wound care for chronic wound, defined as having more than 6 weeks care. And you see that there is a huge difference between the age categories, the left one being younger than 65, and this is confirmed by another graph, and this remains steady over the years. And then, based on the same data, it was possible to see also what were the needs because of individual characteristics linked to the superposition, as I said, of the determinants of health who were difficult, but also to some characteristics linked to the organization of care. And this can be seen in the next graph, where an analysis was made of the trajectories of care of these people. So what was seen in these trajectories is the number of patient contacts with different care providers in the system. And a comparison was made mainly between these two, group A and group C, so patients with similar characteristics. And you see some differences in terms of duration of the care. 86 days for the one group, over 300 in the second group. The second item is regarding the number of different care providers with which this patient has a contact. So you see huge differences as well. Then the third item is the number of emergency room visits. Afterwards, the number of people returning in a nursing home after a nursing home visit, and the number of people returning at home after an emergency room visit. So you see these people have lots of interaction with the system, with difficulties at care transitions, so they are really at risk of breaching continuity at a relational level, clinical level, informational level, you name it. So it is really important that the system can adapt to these needs in order to not have these breaches of community. And this asks to organization of interprofessional collaboration at the local level, hence a good structuration of primary care with other care providers. And the skills needed for these providers are at the same time specialist skills in order to be able to care for these wounds, which are per se complex, but also generalistic knowledge in order to handle also the other determinants of health, other health problems, and this is really an issue. And this is the final slide, some conclusions of not only the research of Lucia, but also of Beehive, is that interdisciplinary research and the triangulation of researchers, research methods, paradigms, and values allows for innovative research methods and deep diving into the reality in order to find solutions to tackle the problems encountered. And in turn, this may help the implementation of innovation in a co-creative way. And this links also research explicitly with research findings with the help of the people who are going to make that change. And there are, of course, many challenges linked to this type of work, not at least because it is very time-consuming to be able to articulate those different points of view. So this is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, now we are going to move to the panel session of our today's award ceremony, and I would like to ask my colleagues, which are the panel discutant, to come and join me here on the stage. The first of the panelists is going to be Professor Nicolas Lomenier. He is a teacher and researcher in artificial intelligence and computer vision at University Paris City. And I would like to ask him if he can give us some short overview of the project Crea Vision, also to tell us something a little about his research and interdisciplinarity in his research, and eventually to ask some questions to representatives of that project. So please.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, I'm working on a kind of interdisciplinary topic with medical doctors for immunotherapy using computer vision and artificial intelligence to segment the patients to provide some cures. But I have a question to Janet. I read the proposal, and I was really impressed by the centers that exist at Aarhus. For instance, there is a center for aesthetics for images created by artificial intelligence. So I'm really curious to know how many people are working in this center. Is it just starting center? How it works? And my second question is about the acceptability by the users of the tools. Are they really happy with the images that are created, or sometimes they say, okay, there are a lot of defaults. I don't know, at the, when it's at the level of the contours, sometimes there is something that is a bit artifactual. I don't know how to say that. So that's I'm really impressed by the promotion that Horus has made about all these new tools. So if you can talk a little bit about that.
Thank you. Is it on? I think, yes. Okay. So first of all, I am so lucky to be at Aarhus University because there are so many centers and institutes that are addressing these topics. So I'm at the Center for Hybrid Intelligence. There's also a Center for Digital Creativity, and then the Center for Aesthetics of AI Images. And the Center for Aesthetics of AI Images is run by Associate Professor Lotte Philipsen, who's also a good friend of mine and has collaborated on this project. She's an art historian. And we are probably about 10 in that center. And it's a broad range between, for example, myself, who I traverse this boundary between cognitive science, also psychology, as well as human-computer interaction, human-AI interaction. So more on the technical side. And then there are many from aesthetics and philosophy and art history. And so in that area, one of the reasons why I reached out to her in the beginning to work on the project with us is I thought, okay, we're making images. We probably should have someone who is an expert in images come and help talk to us about the cultural impact of these types of images. And we talk a lot about ethical considerations and cultural considerations around AI-generated images. So that's the answer for that.
About acceptability of the rendering
yes,
that you can get.
So I mentioned one of the methodologies that we use is called this community citizen science. It's also closely linked to participatory design. So I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with that, but participatory design is now it's quite popular in many areas, but it's been very much a Scandinavian tradition to include the end users in every step of the process of design. So when you're making a technology, instead of just thinking, okay, here's the problem, let me code something and create an interface and hand it to them to do it, it's really working with the end users from the very beginning. And so that also helps to mitigate any question about the quality of the images that can be created, because of course these technologies are not perfect, and we describe it very much so as imperfect. But on a research side, for example, the element of randomness that you can get when working with an artificial intelligence can help very much in this concept of divergent thinking, so coming up with new ideas. When the model you're working with gives you something surprising, even if that's not what you wanted, it can trigger new ideas or potential concepts that you haven't seen. So it's both working with the end users, the participants. In all of these cases, we have specifically tailored our interface as well as the images and the workshops to the particular local contexts. It's not a tool that we use and just say, okay, everyone does the same thing with it. So that process really helps to mitigate some of those issues. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Internet, yes.
Thank you very much, Professor Nicolas. And next representative in our panel session is Professor Duško Ilić. He is Professor of Stem Cell Science at King's College in London, and in his research he is very much interested in sustainability and innovation. And I will like to ask him to give us his opinion on the project Behave, maybe to connect this with some of his research and ask the questions to representatives of that project.
Thank you, Ivan. So, yes, I work in stem cell science, but I work in IVF unit. And so I'm witnessing daily how actually primary care works. And I really find curious. Yes, one thing is access to the right specialty by patients, but also are you taking in consideration administration? Because this is, for example, in UK, where I live, we work in NHS, which is general kind of insurance covering free healthcare for everyone, but it's also intertwined with private care. So there is two completely different experience, and also administration that is completely like separate body, and no matter how health professionals want to participate and help patients, sometimes it's really impossible because of administration. So how you manage to take all this in consideration?
Thank you for this very interesting question. I don't have all the answers, of course, but maybe one venue is indeed the Belgian healthcare system is quite different than in UK. For instance, we do not have a gatekeeper system in Belgium, which means that you can go directly to the specialists. Second, you do not have I forgot what I will say something else. Yes, the difference between private hospitals and public hospitals is not that great as in UK. The insurance systems reimburse every care, even in private hospitals. So I don't know specifically the burden of administration in UK, but I can imagine it's quite horrible. Even if we are now in Belgium in a way that the insurance, national insurance wants to control more and more and increase the burden of administration, you see that there are, many discussions in order to alleviate this burden of administration. So for the moment, I won't say it's manageable, but it is not as heavy as in the UK. But I don't know if that's a complete answer to your concerns about how to handle administration.
No, I mean, in UK, I don't think that can be handled easily. So this is why I was quite, I don't know the system in Belgium, so I was quite curious. How is there? How do you also incorporate the slowness of the process of getting to the special care?
No, we do not have these waiting lists.
Lucky you.
So I think the maximum, even in what they call medical deserts, it's maximum 1 week to have access to a GP. For a specialist, it can be higher depending on the
Science fiction
specialization.
here.
Yes, so we are not talking about the same system, hence the importance to have a chair that is locally rooted and has information about those differences, and hence also 2 chairs, not one for Belgium, because you can imagine it doesn't make sense to do different researchers in such a small country. We need to build up upon what others do and share knowledge.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. And our third panelist is Professor Iris Žeželj. She is from Department of Psychology, Faculty of Philosophy at the Belgrade University, and she is interested in her research in processes that are contributing to different forms of biases from macro to micro level. So I will also ask you to give us a short overview of the project Remember and potentially ask some questions to the representative of that project.
Thank you very much. We have a couple of questions. Maybe we can, I don't know, should we go one by one? Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay, you have the mic, so it's going to work. Okay, so I was really impressed by the project. And I mean, I was so happy when you guys invited me because that's really my area, like the intersection between the individual and collective memories. And I'm so happy that someone is looking into it. So I know that we're here to celebrate the interdisciplinarity, but I wanted to start with the challenges of it. We were together at the same COS project working with historians, for example, and I know that there were some serious clashes in terms of how we envision the goals of the science or the impact of our results in the wider community. I had a feeling that historians subscribe to the model of truth-seeking, and when they hear about the interpretations of the events or the narratives, they tend to go a bit, you know, defensive, so to speak. I'm sure they have something to say about us as well, and so I was wondering how you managed to, you know, to work with such an interdisciplinary team and, like, you know,
That's actually a great question. And would you mind if I actually ask my historian's colleague to
Yes, I
first
would
give
love
the
that.
perspective,
Yes.
and maybe I can complete afterwards? You can choose.
Hi, I am the historian on the project, and I am doing the macro level, and I'm actually a historian that is very interested in the representations, and I'm not looking at what actually happened during the colonization or the collaboration. I am looking at how the Belgian population, and then from a top-down perspective, has represented this past ever since. So I think it depends on what historians you meet.
Okay, it could be. I don't have a representative sample of historians, so
no,
yeah.
there is quite a large group of historians who are very interested in representations and in discourse and in memory. So I think, I think the collaboration is in that perspective aspect is going well. Maybe the other historian.
Yeah, I would like to agree with Louise. For example, me, myself, I have a background in history, but it was also more a meta-historical background. So I'm more concerned with how do we deal with the past, how do we represent the past, what meaning has the past for us today, rather than what has effectively happened. And I think that's also what we're trying to do with our research. It's not necessarily the question, what did your grandparent or great-grandparent do at the time, but rather how do you talk about it within the family. So in that case, we're, I think, quite aligned in terms of our goals. That is not to say, of course, that there are in every interdisciplinary research a lot of challenges in terms of methods, epistemologies that need to be aligned. So yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, I think my first answer would choose your historians carefully.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so it's important to have at least a close and similar understanding of what the overall aim is and the way we approach the story. But it's not to say that it's not challenging. I think the biggest challenge comes from the method. I mean, I've read a bit about you, and you do a lot of social psychology, and the methods we do in psychology are completely different with history. And so I feel I've had to do actually a lot of accept big changes because I can never get the numbers. I would need to run proper psychological analysis. So I find different solutions and find ways my own field can bring something to the story without just saying, well, our way of doing it is to get 1,000 participants and run this massive story. So yeah, we need to find agreements and ways to work together, but it takes time, and it definitely is a challenge, but it's rewarding.
Okay, good to hear that. One more question regarding what would your advice to the Western Balkans be in terms of dealing with history? I know it's a very difficult one. Okay, I just
do I get the Nobel Prize if I get it well?
Yeah, okay. Just a lesson that maybe you draw from your research in terms of, we have different issues here. Like, for example, we have the victimhood narrative and the competitive victimhood between the countries that, or ethnic groups that formed, for example, ex-Yugoslavia. So it's very different in terms of acknowledging some wrongdoings, because you have this overarching victimhood story. It differs from the, for example, colonial narrative, which is about the people who were in power. So how would you, for example, like, compare the two?
Yeah. I think the comparison could work probably better with the collaboration, especially in Flanders.
Could be, yeah.
I didn't go too much into detail because it's pretty complex, but there's definitely a story of victimhood from Flanders, because they see themselves as unjustly repressed after the war for things that they believed they didn't do wrong. They were just defending the Flemish cause. They were not really Nazi per se. And so especially the French-speaking state repressed them unfairly after the war. So we already have a discourse of victimization and victimhood in that case. The problem is that the solution is not there. It's not easy. If we had it, we would use it probably. But one thing we've realized after years of research is the power of discussion at a different level. Because quite often these discussions are used and sometimes abused at a political level to drive agendas one way or the other. But I found recently with some of our historian colleagues, they've been driving a force more through medias to change narratives by showing research saying, well, you feel a victim, but that feeling is maybe not as correct as you thought it'd be. Here's what history is telling us. So driving the discussion, bringing people together as well. So for a similar project, we brought people from the resistance and the collaboration together in one big room and having a healthy discussion.
How did that work? I read about that, so I mean...
It helps.
It was risky in the...
It was a bit hot at certain times, but I think overall it led to a healthy discussion. Obviously, it was only with a few people that were there, but getting people to talk is always something valuable, because then you meet the other person, you can hear what they say, and you can start working on a representation of the past where both sides can try and agree. But there's no easy solution. I think memory work is difficult work, and it takes time, and also willingness to go there by all parties. I don't know if you'd like to add anything.
Yeah, to include the case of colonization in Belgium as well. We actually have had, over the past few years, an inquiry commission who was to explore the legacy of the colonial past and the way we should deal with it today. They were recently finished in December of last year, and they issued a report with 128 recommendations of everything we could do as a Belgian state to deal with the past of colonization. It then passed on to be voted, and was simply rejected over the simple fact that the question whether we should offer apologies or not. So in that sense, it's a funny thing that you ask our opinion or our advice, because that's a failure, right? It's not a failure of the Congo Commission itself, but it's a failure of society to deal.
Was it voted in the parliament or in?
It was voted in parliament, yeah. And that's a bit the case with all these kind of initiatives of memory work to ensure reconciliation. There are so many ways to deal with it. You can have the effort to make one new narrative of the past. You can have a kind of a recognition of all different kind of narratives and let them exist together. Or as we did, we can have an expert commission trying to issue a scientific report, and then it can be voted. But in terms of recommendation, it's also not just what should we do or how should we do it, but also which form do the stakeholders themselves want.
Are ready to, yes. Because, for example, we do have multi-perspective history textbooks dealing with the 90s war and dissolution of former Yugoslavia. It's just that no one is using them. They're existing. So, I mean, I'm also interested in that, like whether you have some kind of advice about how to impact the policymakers and, like, you know, to make our research count more. Or are you, like, disillusioned about that?
I don't think it's a form of disillusion. I think it's a realistic view that it's just a long work and a lot of work, and we need to keep listening to a lot of the different perspectives to see what are the needs of each group that's involved, and how can we pull everyone aboard, right? How can we get everyone to tag along? And we might encounter a lot more initiatives that don't have that much of an impact. It's not necessarily that they have failed, but they just still are not finished. It's an ongoing, unfinished work, I think.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. We will open the discussion for the audience if there are some questions for this, but before that I would like to ask all the prize winners to come here and to take a joint photo with all of us, because colleagues Nicolas and Duško will have to leave soon. So, yes, because they have a plane. Yeah. So, yeah. So please come here on the stage, and we can give them one more applause to all of our winners. And I would say that, yes, this year also we managed to find very good and very high quality projects, and the prize is going to the right hands, I would say. And the prize actually is not something tangible. We cannot give you the prize here. The prize is that you're going to have opportunity to make a short movie in organization of the Circle U network in the following months. So our coordinator is going to contact all of you and arrange this filming, and this is going to be the prize. So now we cannot give you.
Very nice.
Yes, so, but thank you for being here, and thank you for this great presentation.
Thank you.
And now, if there are some questions from the audience, please. So, if there are some questions, please. If there are no questions, then we are just in time. That is organizationally very well, because it is 3:15. Thank you once again all for being patient and for being with us. And once again, congratulations to our prize winners.